So back in 2018, the veteran diplomat Kishore Mahbubani went head-to-head with some of America's top China experts. And what they debated was this massive cognitive gap in how the US and China see each other, and, well, the entire world. Let's dig into why that conversation feels even more urgent today than it did back then.
Mahbubani just gets right to the heart of it with this one quote. He's basically framing the whole US-China relationship as this young, 250-year-old nation trying to tell a 4,000-year-old civilization what's best for it. This single line really sets the stage for the fundamental clash of perspectives we're going to explore. And that quote leads us straight into Mahbubani's central argument, what he himself calls a subversive thesis. His whole point is that the West's entire way of thinking about China might be, well, just plain wrong.
Okay, so here's the core of it. Mahbubani argues that the West's real anxiety isn't about what China does, its military buildup or its trade policies. Nope. He says it's about what China is, an absolute massive success that pulled it off without becoming a Western-style democracy. The very fact that it exists and thrives under the Communist Party, well, that's a direct challenge to a fundamental belief in Western political thought.
And this, right here, is that cognitive gap we're talking about. It's this deep, profound difference in how each side sees reality. The West looks at China and, through its lens of individual liberty, sees this rigid, oppressive state. But from inside China, a civilization that has always prized social harmony and stability, the view is completely different. They see 40 years of the most incredible progress in their history, all under that exact same system.
So you might ask, why not just flip the switch and become a democracy? Well, Mahbubani says that Chinese leaders have looked very, very closely at history. They studied the violent collapse of Yugoslavia. They saw the economic chaos and social decay that followed in post-Soviet Russia. And from their point of view, those aren't models to follow. They're terrifying warnings that stability has to come first, before anything else.
All right, so what's the proof? What is this success that Mahbubani keeps bringing up? Let's take a look at the evidence he lays out to make his case.
His argument is that if you just look at the last 40 years, starting with Deng Xiaoping's big reforms back in '78, it's been the single greatest improvement in the human condition in all of China's 4,000 years of history. I mean, think about it. From a nation where everyone wore the same Mao suit and had almost no personal choices, to a country with the world's largest middle class and a leader in things like AI and cashless payments. The change is, it's just staggering.
And get this for a piece of evidence. In 1 year, 120 million Chinese tourists traveled all over the world, freely. And then, all 120 million of them went back home. So Mahbubani asks a really simple question. If China was this super oppressive place that people claim it is, why would so many people, given the choice, willingly go back?
And this creates a real head-scratcher for Western political theory. The thinking has always been that you need freedom of speech, freedom of the press, to have real innovation. So how is China, a country that doesn't have those things, becoming a world leader in fields like AI, supercomputers, and fintech? The facts just don't seem to line up with the theory.
But here's the thing, Mahbubani wasn't just giving a speech. He was in a room full of America's top China scholars, and they came right back at him, arguing that his rosy picture ignores some really brutal realities.
Professor Jerome Cohen fired back with this powerful image. China isn't some confident giant, he said. It's more like a cat on a hot tin roof. He's suggesting the system is actually really fragile. The fact that the government is cracking down more and more isn't a sign of strength. It's proof that the leadership is terrified of dissent, especially from its own elites. I mean, think about it. A truly secure government wouldn't need to silence its people so harshly, right?
Mahbubani's response to that was sharp. He basically said, look, I've been hearing this China is about to collapse argument for 30 years. His point was that for decades, Western experts have been predicting this imminent collapse, and it just never happens. Meanwhile, all the evidence on the ground shows China just getting stronger and stronger. Okay, so from there, the debate quickly moved away from theory and got into the tough, real-world conflicts happening on the ground. The South China Sea is a perfect example of this cognitive gap. Mahbubani describes China's actions as assertive, but not aggressive. He points out that with their military, they could kick every other country out of those disputed islands in 24 hours. The fact that they don't, he says, is a sign of restraint. But the U.S. experts look at the exact same situation, the island building, the harassing of ships, and they call it straight-up aggression that bullies smaller nations and threatens the whole idea of freedom of the seas. And what about Taiwan?
Mahbubani's take is surprisingly calm. He suggests China isn't planning an invasion. It's playing the long game, maybe a 50-year game. The strategy, he says, is to make Taiwan so economically dependent on the mainland that eventually unification just happens peacefully. Now, the American experts in that room thought that was way too optimistic and saw the whole situation as much, much more dangerous.
So you've got these two completely different worldviews on a collision course. How do you even begin to avoid a catastrophe? Mahbubani actually ended the debate by suggesting a possible way forward.
He laid out this three-part plan that would require some huge changes from both countries. First, he said the U.S. needs to create a global system of rules that it would be happy to live with even if it's not the #1 power anymore. Second, America needs to stop preaching about democracy and start proving it's better by its own amazing performance. And third, China has to get that its massive size naturally freaks people out, and it needs to act with a lot more care.
To really drive home that last point, Mahbubani used this great analogy. He said, imagine a tiny mouse is sitting in the corner of a room, and then suddenly it grows into an elephant. Even if that elephant is the friendliest elephant in the world, its sheer size is going to make everyone else in that room really nervous. And his point is, China needs to understand that. Its size alone creates fear, no matter what its intentions are.
And all of this brings us back to the central, unanswered question of the entire debate. What is really driving the tension between the U.S. and China? Is it what Mahbubani says, America's deep ideological anxiety about a successful competitor that isn't a democracy? Or is it what the experts say, the cold, hard geopolitical reality of a rising power just flexing its muscles? That was the core question in 2018, and it's a question we're all still trying to figure out today.